Chris, thank you for joining me. Do you think NATO has responded well to the situation between Russia and the Ukraine?
Yeah, I think we've got to differentiate between NATO, the organisation, and the individual members of NATO who have responded in different ways. And I think it's slightly irresponsible to suggest that NATO is there to protect Ukraine. Ukraine's not a member of NATO, and so far, Vladimir Putin hasn't threatened 1 metre of NATO territory. So NATO is actually doing its job.
So what do you feel then? Because if NATO, as you said, as we know, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and they shouldn't really be getting involved in this at all. And as you said, it doesn't appear that they really are. But the trouble here is that it feels, and I know I've been reading that some people are saying that it feels like the West are almost antagonising this situation and actually creating a situation which may not actually materialise at all.
Okay, should we just unpick that? This crisis has been created by Vladimir Putin stationing over 150,000 troops on the borders of Ukraine. He's also got 3 frontal regimental level air brigades, and he's threatening Ukraine. I don't see how the defensive alliance of NATO is threatening anybody, to tell you the truth. It's not saying it's going to intervene. It's not saying that actually they're going to position any troops further forward than they normally do. So the only people who are actually threatening anybody here or escalating the crisis are the Russians. And let's face it, we're looking at a totalitarian regime headed by a dictator who looks very much like Adolf Hitler in the 1930s in the way he's operating.
I'm wondering, though, because NATO are offering a level of support in a respect, and they have actually reached out to Russia consistently, actually, over the past 30 years, and they've worked together on lots of different issues as well. So what is the relationship now between NATO and Russia like?
Well, the relationship is one of balance. Russia knows that if it takes any action against any NATO country, it's a question of an attack on one is an attack on all. But Ukraine, I repeat, is not a NATO country. It is not entitled to anything other than shall we say, the moral protection of the Western alliance. The members of the NATO alliance, the United States, Western Europe, and also the United Kingdom, are saying, look, we don't really want Ukraine invaded because it's a democracy. We're democracies. We don't like that. And what we're really looking at here is the new fault line in the world. It's not between the NATO and Russia. It's between the Eurasian autocracies and totalitarian powers of China, Russia, Iran, and the democracies of the free world. And this is basically a fight between totalitarianism and democracy. And Ukraine is in the front line of that. And those countries that think they have an interest in protecting democracy, the United States, United Kingdom, and the stronger members of Europe, are taking that line at the moment. But it's got really nothing to do with NATO. NATO is there to protect its members.
So you see this as an alliance of Western powers who are coming in to protect Ukraine in a sense, and it's not a NATO thing at all. Okay. Now, finally, then how big a threat do you think? Sorry.
No, sorry, NATO has a voice in this because if Ukraine is invaded, it may well be that some members of NATO, particularly those in Eastern Europe, see Russia going for them next. So there is an implication for NATO. But at the moment, Russia is not threatening any NATO country. This is all about, as I said, democracy versus dictatorship, basically.